Good morning, moms of master books. I hope you're having a fantastic week. Today we're going to do a Facebook Live that I'm extremely excited about. It's called Silencing the Critic. Somebody had messaged me and asked if I would ever consider just addressing some of the ways I would approach answering critics and some of the arguments, so to speak, that we've developed over the years. So let me tell you a little bit about my backstory. I went to public school until 8th grade, then went to a private school and graduated from a private school. And at the same time, I met my wife, Kristen, at that private school. And we graduated. She graduated a year early because she was an overachiever. And let's see, hello to Jessica and Sarah. It's good to have you guys on board. And so Kristen was an overachiever. She graduated a year early. We went to college together, got married, and started having children. And two things happened early on as we were having children. We had our first child, and she was extremely strong-willed and had a lot of character. And but at the same time, was absolutely loved. And then we had a couple of miscarriages. And it was in that process when we really began to seek the Lord for the blessing of more children. And he gave us the promise in Isaiah that said to enlarge the place of your tent, that he would fill our tent and bless us. And after a period of time, Kristen became pregnant, and we ended up, of course, we have 9 children. And so each one has been an absolute blessing and a fulfillment of the promise that the Lord had given to us years ago. And in that process of really seeking him for children, we developed an appreciation that our children are really a legacy, that we have an investment that the Lord has given to us. So as my first child was ready to go to school, there was a private school in town that had an opening for a principal. I had taught in a private school, and I became also available to become the principal of that school. And so in that, I had teachers that were certified by the state and able to have exposure to that. We felt the Lord calling us to homeschool. Kristen claims that she pulled our oldest from the school that I was a principal of, which is true. And we began a homeschooling journey. And through the process of homeschooling our own, the Lord led us through a series of events that we started a business. We sold homeschool curriculums. We sold a lot of the major lines, the Saxon, the Apologia, BJU, ACE, School of Tomorrow, Switched On, Life Pack, Horizons. For 8 years, we had about 20,000 customers that we served in that process, and we sold that to Christian book distributors in 2010, went full-time into ministry. And in full-time ministry, we got to walk alongside a lot of families who were in that spot of their children and raising children and dealing with issues that families do. And then the Lord opened up the opportunity to be part of what he's doing here at Master Books, which is a dream opportunity. And we're so happy to be part of that and to be part of this community alongside with you. So that's kind of the backdrop that I have. I tend to be very outspoken on homeschooling. It's hard to convince me that there's any other way. When I was the principal of the school, my daughter, her best friend, 2 beautiful young girls, had the same opportunities in life. You would say equally matched in a lot of areas. When we pulled our daughter from school, I asked the other family if they would ever consider homeschooling theirs. Because the mom worked in the public school system, she said, no, I can keep an eye on things. I'm friends with all of the teachers. And so we're going to put her into school with us. Over the period of time, we watched for 12 years as these 2 young ladies developed and grew together, the trajectory that my daughter had, and I got to see the blessing of the benefits of homeschooling in her life. Wasn't all perfect because she had me as a father, but we got to see how she grew into a godly woman, and she took the faith and she made it her own, versus this other child who just so much pain and hardship and so many terrible things. And the lifestyle that I got to see of my daughter the day she got married, and the blessing that the Lord had prepared for her, and her life has been so blessed, and that's God's grace. And then I watched the pain and suffering that this other family has gone through, watching their daughter struggle through so many different issues of cutting and suicide and lesbianism and just different things. And in that process, I said to myself, I'm not going to be silent. That if I have the opportunity to speak boldly for something that I believe in, I don't believe homeschooling anybody, but I certainly don't believe that public school does, or even a poor private education. And so I refuse to be silent, because in so many ways, I feel like I'm almost fighting again for the innocence of this little girl that was lost. There are a lot of good teachers. There are a lot of exceptions to the rule. I understand that. But what I also know is it only takes one teacher or one student in that classroom environment to have a negative impact that will change the trajectory of that life. And this isn't all truth. I've stood by the casket of children who and had to comfort the parents who made that one choice that allowed that one individual into that student's life that caused them to go down a pathway that they never would have chosen. And so many times that was the reason. And so where my outspokenness comes is from a place of, I've been involved in the education market for a long time. We served a lot of families, walked alongside a lot of families. My encouragement to you is homeschooling doesn't save, but homeschooling does put us in a mindset that we are responsible for our children. We're responsible to educate and disciple our children. And there is nobody more qualified than you, because God has given you that role. He's equipped you for that role, and He's promises to come alongside you and supply every need you have according to His riches. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about some of the objections or critics that came, and I'll just give you my inputs, my 2 cents. Eat it. If it works, spit out the bones. If it doesn't, it certainly isn't for everybody, my approach, I know. Okay, so Carrie says, what if the critic is your spouse? And in over the years, yeah, a lot of times the desire to homeschool is birthed more in the mom, right? And so that's a good thing. And sometimes it takes dad a little bit longer to come on board. So we have to first take that argument and kind of break it out a little bit. The person that I speak to most is a believing spouse. And here's how I approach it. And this is going to be the basis for a lot of my arguments. I believe that God has ordained me as the voice in my children's life to train them up and prepare them for the work of His kingdom. And I believe that He has given me stewardship. His scripture is very clear that when He gives you a talent or He gives you something to steward, that there's an expectation that you will steward it well. And if you don't, you will be accountable for it. And so from that standpoint, my basic premise is that one day I will stand before the Lord God Almighty and I will give an account for how I stewarded the gift of my children. And the worst thing in my brain at this point is to stand before Him and say, I'm sorry, I did nothing with it. I thought I was just supposed to babysit them. I didn't realize that I was supposed to actually develop them and grow them and train them and raise them up to bring you glory. So when I do stand before Him, one of my primary motivations is to be able to say, yes, each of these children that you gave me, all of the 9 children that you have entrusted to me, and now even as their extended families come, the role that you have me in, I did everything that I could to grow that investment, to steward that opportunity. And on that day, you may not like the decisions I've made for my family to homeschool. My parents or those in my community may not like that, but they're not going to be there that day. They're not going to be accountable for my children and what he gave me as an opportunity. That's between me and him. And so I believe that for believers, we have to be eternally minded as well, that this is beyond the present. This is an eternal, right, beyond today. This is for all of eternity. The other thing that I tell people is, people say you can't take anything with you, but what about my children? I want my children to participate in the same eternal promises that I have. And so, well, I may not be able to take my houses and my cars and other people's opinions with me. What I can take is my children, and knowing that they are spending eternity in the same place and peace that I have. So that's the foundation that I have when I'm talking to a husband who is a believer. I mentioned in the comments that one day I met with a husband in Lowe's. He wasn't supportive of the homeschooling decision for a lot of reasons. And we just had a conversation, and I just said, you're the man, and the Lord has given specific responsibilities to you, and he will hold you accountable for that. And he said, well, I'm not going to hell or my kids aren't going to hell because they're in public school. And I said to him, well, I sure hope not for your sake, because if they do, you're the one who has to stand accountable for placing them under the counsel of the ungodly. And that's when my son said, okay, so you've ticked off another person that will never speak to us. And of course, it was in front of the Lowe's staff and everybody else. But for me at that point, I really was fighting for a family that we loved so dearly, and that we saw what was happening as their children were approaching junior high, and they were beginning to lose their fire, and the influences of friends and the public environment was beginning to take its toll. And it really is a wrestling, isn't it, that we have to navigate our kids through this postmodern culture and such confusing messages. And so
I was wondering if everybody can look in their offices.
I'm sorry. So to the believer, my challenge is, this is about eternity and stewardship, and this is about actually being in the role that the Lord has for you. And so to a dad who's not supportive, my encouragement is just, are you stewarding everything according to what God's expectations are? To an unbeliever, it's a little bit different, because we don't have the same, it's not apples to apples. There's kind of an unequal yoking. But what I would say to somebody who wants to homeschool with the unbeliever is win them over. There's a lot of benefits to homeschooling. I know a lot of people came in and said scheduling is something that you can, we have the ability as a family to schedule. If I could, 1 Peter says, likewise, husbands, be subject to your own husbands, so that even if some of them do not obey the word, so they're not committed to discipling and training and raising their family according to the nurturing of the Lord, they may be won without a word by the conduct of their wives. Guys are fixers a lot of times, and when tension in the home, and the home has conflict, guys feel the need to have to fix that. And so a lot of times when the school isn't going well, and there's tension in the home, mom's angry, the kids, there's just tension and anger, a guy will feel the need to fix it. And so letting him know that occasionally you may need to just vent about having a hard day. He doesn't need to fix it, but show him the wins. Show him how the kids are getting excited about things. If he likes fishing, then study marine biology and go fishing and invest in things that he's interested in so that he begins to see the benefits of homeschooling, because homeschooling is a lifestyle. It gives us so many opportunities, right? It's not just about spending time with our friends and growing, or with our kids and protecting them. It's an actual lifestyle that we are able to participate in. We've been able to take 3-week vacations across the country and taken our kids there. We've gone to do different things that we could never in school. We don't have to deal with teacher nonsense, drama in the classroom, drama outside the classroom. We don't have to deal with bus drivers and bus issues, all the things that my parents had to deal with. And so I would encourage you, if it's a non-believing husband, to just win him over. Show him the benefits of home education and show him that you are capable of doing it and that the kids are better for it. And just be careful. I know that it's not easy, and I don't want to put a lot of pressure and mommy shame, but just be careful not to make too much tension to make it feel like he has to fix it, so that his idea of fixing this is going to be to send them back to public school, because that's what you're trying to avoid. Okay? Okay. So I'm not sure if that helps a little bit more, but at the end of the day, if a husband doesn't support it, you have to just turn it over to the Lord. I know even in as perfect as I like to think I am, Kristen will say, I've had to turn you over to the Lord so many times and allow him to do the work, and to be the one to bring you to the place that you would lead and take things seriously and love your family the way you should. And I 100% agree with that. There comes a point where you just have to say to the husband, it's on you, big guy. God is holding you responsible for the family that you created, and he's expecting you to lead. And sometimes it may not always be easy to hear that from a wife, but maybe somebody that he respects that could speak that into his life would be beneficial. Okay. Summer says, someone who says passive-aggressive things, or in a passive-aggressive way, like our school principal talks about how much he dislikes having to work with homeschoolers. Okay, before I answer that, I want to say something. I'm going to be giving a free digital copy of Answers for Homeschooling. The coupon code is silence. So I'm going to put a link into the Answers for Homeschooling book. You can get a free digital copy. Use the coupon code silence. This book is so many good answers about how to deal with the skeptics. Israel Wayne has 9 going on 10 children. Yay, Israel. And he grew up in a homeschool community. He has a lot of experience with homeschoolers. These answers in these books are phenomenal to deal with the skeptic. I'm giving this away for free as a digital copy. If I could encourage you that if you're at all blessed by it, or you want to educate yourself, and I want you to invest in understanding the basics behind it, that you would consider purchasing the physical book, Education, Does God Have an Opinion? Or purchasing the physical book. Or if you know a homeschooler in the community, a mom who's struggling, or a family who's just, use it as a seed to plant into their life, and understand this. The husband that's a critic, I know the testimonies of moms who have read this, it's given them a firm conviction, and then they've been able to communicate that message as well. So I'm going to put a link up. I'll talk about this again. Coupon code is silence, and you can get the digital copy of this for free. And then I would encourage you to also look at the physical copies of that. Okay, so to Summer, the passive-aggressive person. Okay. I'm getting older, and I'm realizing that so much of communication between adults is unhealthy. And I want to teach you something. Northerners, this is really valuable to you. I'm from the North, and so as I've moved to the South, I've learned a phrase that's very helpful. The phrase is, bless your heart. And bless your heart, basically in the South, means you're a blooming idiot for even talking to me that way. And so you don't have to say it mean. You can just say to the critic, to the passive-aggressive, bless your heart, or bless their heart. In doing that, I'm sorry, let me just put my phone on Do Not Disturb. Okay. In doing that, you're able to convey to them that, yes, you are, for asking me that. So use that phrase often, bless your heart. If you're from the South, you know exactly what that means, and you've said it probably a number of times. If you're not from the South, it's just valuable, because the first time I came down here, I'm listening to all these people talk, and they're like, "Oh, bless their heart, bless her heart," but she's just not, And I'm thinking, if they ever say "bless my heart," that means they have just put me in a certain category. So, just a little tip. Don't be afraid to use the bless your heart. The other thing about passive aggressive people, I think you have to shut it down. I think communication wise, when a person is using other people's arguments to convey their message, I really feel like you just have to get to the point and say, I don't really give a flip what this person is saying about me. How do you feel about the topic? The principal doesn't like working with homeschoolers because he feels that they're idiots. Well, I don't really give a flip. Principal thinks I'm not under his authority, and I obviously don't care. What do you feel about that? Let's have a conversation about that. And over time, if you haven't read the book Boundaries by Henry Cloud, I highly recommend reading the Boundaries book and understanding how to place healthy boundaries. But sometimes there are toxic relationships and there are toxic people that just breed negativity into our lives. And especially people who undermine us as parents and authorities in our children's lives. I think we have to have honest conversations. And so it's better, in my perception, to just say, listen, we're not 8. If you don't agree with my desire to homeschool, that's fine. Let's talk this out. Let me explain why I homeschool. If you can't handle that, the relationship has changed. And we just need to have an honest conversation about this, because playing games and all of that type of stuff consumes way too much energy. And the truth is, I'd rather put my energy into things that really matter, not this passive aggressive game. Over time, the more we've tried to appease the passive aggressive or play the games or try to avoid, it just took too much energy. And so you're almost better of, let's just get to the heart of the matter. We're not 8 years old. Let's talk this out. How do you feel about the fact that I homeschool, and what does that mean to you? And what business is it of yours? And maybe it is your business. If it is, then let's talk about that and why you feel that way. Summer Higgins says her in-laws are totally critical against homeschooling, and they're starting their 13th year. Every time they see them, they quiz the kids. Yeah, so I probably have a lot of attitude about this. I've had more opposition with families that we were trying to help homeschool from the grandparents or the parents. And one of the most tragic is a family that actually threatened to withdraw support of their children and love of their children if they homeschooled. And a lot of it was just because of the reputation of being able to say, well, my kids are homeschooling. They're not part of public school. They're not playing sports. They're not whatever. And the child, one of the children was begging to be homeschooled. And he had very good reasons for that. There were pressures that were going on in his life, and there were some sin issues that he was dealing with. And he was begging his family to help him. And because of the pressure from the parents, they didn't. And the trajectory that family has gone down and the shame that family has had to incur is heartbreaking. And yet I just don't understand sometimes why there's all this pressure, what the issue is. But I think one of the most important things, and I mentioned this in the comments, is homeschooling so many times is an obedience issue. It's a calling that the Lord has placed on our lives, and we feel it. And so as we step into that call, not everybody agrees with the calls that the Lord has called us to. And just like Jesus had to say to Peter, get thee behind me, because you're coming between me and the will of the Lord. And I'm going to obey the Lord, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to allow you to move me from that. And if you're being undermined as a parent by your children or by relatives or in-laws, again, I think you just have to have that honest conversation that says, let's get to the heart of this. I know you don't support us as parents and you don't support this decision, but we're going to do it. And here's the truth. I'm not going to allow you to bring toxic attitudes and toxic opinions into this relationship that undermines my authority and my role as a parent, because I need to have the respect, and I need to, the relationship is built on trust. And if you're coming in and you're breaking that, and you're planting seeds and bringing in your insecurities or whatever, then we need to deal with that, because it's toxic to this relationship and it's not healthy. And I'm going against everything else. You know, the decision to homeschool for a believer is a lot like the song, I have decided to follow Jesus, no turning back. You know, the cross before me, the world behind me, no turning back. It really is a commitment to walk in a different direction than everybody else is walking. And it's very purpose driven. I believe that it's very easy to defend statistically. It's very easy to defend from the results. And if you're just starting to homeschool, trust the results, right? When we started, I thought, boy, I hope this works. And now 20 some years later, as I get to see the rewards of homeschooling, I'm like, you couldn't convince me this doesn't work. And you know, it'd be hard to do that. And so when it comes to people in your life that are not blessing and encouraging you, I think you can show grace and you can show mercy, but trying to dodge it or hope it improves without an honest conversation, without setting healthy boundaries to protect your family and to protect your children, I have never seen it work. And I wish, if I could say to my younger self, the sooner you would have confronted some of these issues, the less of an impact they would have had later on. And so that would be my encouragement. There may not be an easy buzzword, an easy way to shut down the critic, other than let's just talk this out and let's have an honest conversation. And let's get to the heart of what's really being said. You either don't trust that I'm smart enough to educate my child, in which case I can certainly show you the statistics that say qualifications don't matter. Or you have a pride issue because you're afraid to say that your children aren't playing sports in public school, they're not part of the honor society or whatever. And then that's a hard issue that the grandparent or parent needs to deal with, and they need called on it. So hopefully that doesn't sound too harsh. Okay. Let's see. Angela says she has a friend whose husband wants her to, but she doesn't feel qualified. I put the link in a previous thread to Dr. Brian Ray's research, and I will put a link here as well. Again, I'm encouraging you to also get the free digital copy of Answers book, read through this, get the Education, Does God Have an Opinion book, begin building and investing in your own argument to defend yourself. But statistics show that an education of a homeschool mom has no bearing on her effectiveness to teach her children. Those of you who are in this group, you have 9,000 other moms who are in the place that you are. We have somebody here today who's a homeschooling mom, part of this group, and she has her degree in special education and young education. She taught for years in the public school system. She was a teacher. Now she's homeschooling. We have moms and moderators who have master's degrees, and in this group is a think tank of individuals with life experience and experience with training children that far exceeds what a lot of public school teachers have access to. So you have resources, curriculums that are written in a way that will help carry the heavy lifting of education. Qualifications means, do you have a heart for your children? Do you care about their outcome? And do you care about their outcome more than anybody else? And if that's it, what's the difference between a pit bull and a homeschooling mom? One wears lipstick, one doesn't. Give me the homeschooling mom, and I can pretty much guarantee you that she will do whatever it takes to see her children succeed. At the cost of her physical, at the cost of finances and resources, God has given that passion to nurture and train up a child in her heart. And I don't need a piece of paper or 4 years in a public institution to confirm that. What I need to know is, do I have the athlete? We can train the athlete, but it's really hard to if you don't have that heart. And so I'm confident in the ability, with the resources and community that is available to homeschoolers today, that homeschooling your children is not an issue. Co-ops, mentors, you name it. There are just so many resources that give you opportunity today. So if you don't feel qualified, it's not, we use the quote a lot, it takes a village to raise a child as a secular. We use the quote, we've seen the village, we don't want it raising our children. Well, in a way, in the homeschooling community, we also have the opportunity to move to a better village, right? And so sometimes if it takes more resources, more peer groups, whatever, then we're moving to a better village, and that village will help raise our children. How's that? Okay. Denise says, this is my first year homeschooling, and let's see, a 14-year-old who takes one class at high school is being harassed by his former middle school classmates, saying your mom is not qualified to be your teacher. So I'm going to tell you how this would go out in our house. So if I'm hearing my children say that, I would probably say something smart like, what I would say to the student is, well, I can certainly understand why you would feel that way. If I had your mother, I would be concerned as well. That's where my wife would step in and say, that would be an inappropriate answer. That's not something that we would say. And so I don't know that I have a good answer for this. I just think a 14-year-old student is clueless, and they're going to say stupid things, and you can't fight stupid. And, they're trained by robots to think like a robot. I don't expect you to get it. You're not going to get it. But my family is stepping out and doing something that is remarkable. I mean, when you look at all the people in the world that have been homeschooled and the people that are being homeschooled right now, it's not that hard to put together a pretty impressive list of people that have homeschooling. Even people that Anna's criticizing me. I know it is awful. Teach your child to say, bless your heart. That's the best thing to do. But when you look at the list, you can show your children, and there are celebrities that are being homeschooled. There are, motorcycle and car racers, and you name it, people that are homeschooling their children because of the lifestyle that it gives. So they don't have to have, not every homeschooler example has to be taken from a Tim Hawkins video. Some of these people are actually really cool and live really cool lives. Families that are traveling all over the country and motor homeschooling and all of that type of thing. It's just incredible to see what this community brings. So my thing is, anytime your children are going to be exposed to other children, especially public school children, they're going to be curious. And a lot of times my kids would just say, yeah, but we get to go fishing during the day, or we wear our pajamas at school. I mean, I don't understand why you think that's a better way, because what you get public sponsored lunches. I mean, we can have bad hash browns too, if we wanted it. So, okay. Socialization. Somebody mentioned socialization and being bothered. This is a fun one, because anybody who thinks that socialization in a public school setting was a brilliant idea really needs better socialization. It's true, right? take 5-year-olds and put them together, and then for 13 years keep them in that peer group, that exposure for the next 13 years. So first graders are with first graders and second graders are with second graders. Or maybe we have a caveat because we actually put them on the bus, and that's their socialization. That's the greatest socialization most kids have, is on the school bus, where a kindergartner has to sit next to a 12th grader who's squeezing his leg the whole time and bullying him. I mean, I learned more on the school bus than I ever did from any teacher, and most of it wasn't good. So I would just, when it comes to socialization, this is good for grandparents, anybody else, is public schools, or I like the term now government school. A government school socializes children at one age bracket, and it keeps them there, and that would be a horizontal socialization pattern. Homeschoolers, on the other hand, we use a vertical socialization where we give them greater exposure to multiple age groups, multiple income groups, multiple job and demographics and social groups. My children can converse with pastors, they can converse with drug addicts, they can converse with a store clerk, they can converse with UPS drivers, they can converse with attorneys, because they've been with me in all of those places. So my 21-year-old son who goes into car sales is able to converse with doctors and lawyers and everybody. He's not trying to figure out how to find other 21-year-olds to sell to. He already understands how to communicate with other people in the real world. Education in a public government setting that just teaches that to communicate with people our own age and doesn't teach them how to have exposure to other students is ridiculous. And so when people ask me about socialization, I'll say, number one, the research shows that students who are homeschooled are more socialized than their counterparts. The research shows that homeschoolers who are graduates are actually much more what's the word I'm looking for? Likely to participate in civic duties, to be active in their community, to be caring for people. So this idea that socialization is an issue is really, it's a pretty weak argument, because there's no research to support that. And so if somebody asks, maybe they could explain the research or what their concern would be, ask them to defend their position, because the research that we have as homeschoolers is quite the opposite. So I would put them on the defensive for asking. Bless their hearts. Okay. When I had the opportunity to work in a school setting. I was a principal. We had preschool through sixth grade. I had 6 state certified teachers. They were all incredible individuals, and I enjoyed them, working with them very much. But there was a component to the certification program that they had, or the groupthink side of education. Jenna asked if I can give research. Yes. The link that I put into the other post, actually, Brian Ray does a lot of research on that, but I will put links as well to some of that research. And I know that there are some other reports that are that way. So in dealing with these teachers, I would often be amazed that there was such a groupthink mindset and they couldn't get outside the box. And they would sit there and as the principal, they would want me to discipline a student for not enjoying their class. And I'm thinking, I can barely sit here and listen to you. And you want this 7-year-old to have to sit here all day as a captive audience, and you want me to punish him for saying the things I wish I could say as an adult. It was their job to make learning fun. It was their job to teach and to figure out how to connect with that child. And their whole collective mindset was, it's the student's responsibility to come and learn and be excited by my class. And it was a bad model. And so many times, we recently, I can't go into a lot of the details, but had the opportunity to speak with a teacher, and I said, what motivates you? What gets you excited? Why are you a teacher? And it was basically, well, there wasn't any other job I really was interested in. And this was something I could do, and I could have summers off. And like, what's your passion? And most homeschool families, when they catch the passion, they're fired up about it. And there's a desire. It's not just to protect our children. I think it's important to protect our children from the influences of the world until they're prepared and have the logic and the spiritual maturity to defend against it. But there's more to it. There's actually, like, I can prepare my child for success, not just teach them how to answer questions on a test, to validate your job. And so from the standpoint of, public education is so wonderful and homeschooling is so horrible, is anybody actually paying attention to the results? Are they actually questioning? They're great teachers, don't get me wrong, but how many teachers are actually leaving the public school system to teach their own children? That's a testimony. Why is that happening? Why are they turning their back on a system that they've been so engaged in? And what I found is it's not the majority of teachers. There are a lot of great teachers. It's that one teacher. My favorite teacher in school was actually my neighbor. He taught general science. He hated God. His mother was a devout Christian. He hated my father because my father was a pastor, but he treated me well, and he undermined a lot of what my father wanted for me. And he made science come alive. And I wanted to please him, and he made science interesting, but he taught an evolutionary worldview, and he taught that there is no God, there is no creator. And he laid foundations that would take years to have to unfold and work through. And it was just that one teacher, that one experience. And he was actually a fantastic teacher. He really was. He was one of my best teachers. He discipled me fully in the ungodly counsel, and I believed it and accepted it as truth because he meant something to me. He was valuable. And so that's what I think we have to be careful for. Okay. Again, I'm going to put a link up for Answers for Homeschooling, the digital copy. I would really encourage you to get it, look through it, read it. It'll be free. The coupon code for that is silence. If you use coupon code silence, you get it for free, but let me please encourage you to buy the physical copies or the digital copy of Education Does God Have an Opinion? If you have read this, if you would please let people know the benefit you got from this, because I know some of you moms have read this or are reading it. There is so much good meat in here that will strengthen your conviction to be able to stand up to the critic. And really what it all comes down to is passion. I don't care that I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer. I have passion, and I will do whatever it takes to make sure my children succeed. And so that's what you're going to come up against if you come up against me when you're criticizing the homeschool argument, if that makes sense. There's one other thing that I want to talk about before I close out. It touched my heart to see moms saying that they had unbelieving husbands and that didn't support them in this. And over the years of being involved in ministry and homeschooling, we've had the opportunity to come alongside families and pray for a miracle, that God would grab hold of that husband's heart, that he would ignite them with a passion for his kingdom. His Holy Spirit would equip them to be the leaders that God intends for us as men. I know the prayers of my wife, the impact that has had on my life. I've seen the miracle of men who were atheists or completely not interested in the things of God. I've seen them get ignited and come. They just became new men. We have a group here of 9,000 families. And understanding the representation. But can we make this a prayer project for the remainder of this year, that we will begin praying for the husbands in this group that are represented in this group, that we will pray for those who are unbelieving, that God will reveal himself and his son Jesus to them. Can we begin praying that for all of us, the husbands that are represented in this group, that God will ignite us and them and awaken them to the call that he has on their life and to the children that he has entrusted to them to steward. I have seen fantastic miracles occur in this area, and I just believe that we have the opportunity with this many individuals to come together in unity and pray that God will begin to perform in a supernatural, remarkable way, that we'll see families strengthened. See, Master Books is interesting because we want to grow faith. We want to remove friction points so that you can have the win and you can succeed. We want to ignite a passion in your students for learning, and we want them to get excited about the things of God. But we also understand that in order for that to all take place, we as parents have to be excited about the things that God is doing and in discipling. And so I've asked Jennifer White, who does our Monday morning prayer, and she does a lot of the scripture and posts with moms and Master Books in action and that type of thing. In the near future, she's actually going to do a corporate prayer that we will post. And if I could ask you and your children in your morning basket time, your prayer time, that you would just pray for any husbands represented in the Moms of Master Books, that God would begin to move in their lives and do something miraculous. All right. I'm excited about that because I really think that what an encouragement that can be. And it isn't just to impact this generation. It's a legacy. Our children are a legacy. They speak for us for volumes for years and years and years to come. And to be able to have a part in that and begin praying that God will move miraculously in this community, I just think exciting thing. Okay, so I'm going to be posting some links, and hopefully I didn't throw anything out too shocking. This is a lot of fun. I enjoy this debate. I enjoy this conversation because when I used to travel, I did a lot of flying, and I would sit next to a family, and I would always, they'd say, "Oh, what do you do?" And I'd say, and then the conversation would always lead to, "I have 9 children," and then immediately the door was open. And if I say I'm homeschooling or I have 9 children, I have the opportunity to now also present the gospel, because the reason I homeschool is because I believe that we are eternally called, and that I have access to eternity through the power and blood of Jesus Christ. And so there's just all kinds of opportunity, but you got to know your stuff, and you got to know this argument. And so I've enjoyed refining my argument. I've enjoyed engaging the critics, and also coming alongside families and seeing them be encouraged and strengthening up so that they can run the race that God has put before them. Okay, so thank you much for being part of this group. We really appreciate you guys, and we will be praying for your husbands as well. I know some of your husbands are absolute rock stars, and for that, we pray the Lord's blessing on them, and that he just continues to pour out on them with wisdom and strength and all that's needed to accomplish that journey. But we're also praying for those who just need a little bit extra something. And somebody says, I touch my worst critic. Absolutely, I think that we can become our own worst critics when it comes to homeschooling. Can I just encourage you, just run the race, one step at a time, one foot in front of the other, win the day. You're going to see that your kids are going to turn out fantastic, and you may not feel qualified, but God doesn't make mistakes, and he's working in his sovereignty. He's working out the details. And there were days that we thought, I could tell you instances where one of my sons stole something. He lied fantastically about it. I thought, oh my goodness, I just saw visions of him in prison, and oh my, awful thing. The Lord used all of that, and he used it in my life. He used it in his life, in the life of my family. And we walked through that journey. But at the same time, as I look back now and I think about all the energy that went into some of the smaller things, God is really seated on the throne, and we can trust him to do what his promises are. So yes, we can be our own worst critic. I encourage you to surround yourself with people who encourage you and bless you, with people who are winning the day, and find that group of people. We're the average of the 5 people we surround ourselves with. And so if the people around you are negative and questioning you or making you always feel like you have to defend yourself, you need to find people who encourage you and bless you and support you in what you're doing, because that is essential no matter what we do. If I'm in sales or I'm in raising my kids or just being a spouse, I need to be encouraged and blessed. Okay? All right, guys, thank you so much for enduring this, and may God bless your day. May God bless your family, and I look forward to the testimonies of what God is going to do in the lives of the dads of master books. God bless y'all.